Thank you to Lionsgate for sponsoring this episode. I was excited about John Wick Chapter 4 coming out this month, and that's why I wanted to make this dish from Chapter 2, steak and fries cooked in duck fat, a fitting final meal for villains and henchmen alike. You can see John Wick Chapter 4 in theaters now. To find showtimes near you, head to the link in the video description.
Duck fat. Makes all the difference.
Jonathan?
Have you seen the menu here? Lot of options.
Jonathan, listen to me.
A man can stay here a long time and never eat the same meal twice.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to Binging with Babish, where this week we're taking a look at the steak and duck fat fries from John Wick 2. Now you might notice that I have one of the gold coins used as currency in the John Wickiverse, but look a little bit closer and you'll notice that it is emblazoned with the Peter Luger Steakhouse logo. That's because this is in fact a chocolate coin from a quintessential New York City steakhouse. So I think we can all agree this is a funny joke and or observation of some kind, one that I definitely didn't just film thinking that I would come up with something when recording the voiceover. So now that we've established that that's definitely not what happened, we can get down to cooking. First up, I want to test the best potatoes from which to make duck fat fries. The classic and ubiquitous Idaho russet potato, the less starchy and more waxy Yukon Gold, my personal favorite for virtually every potato application, a golden potato from which the Yukon Gold is derived, a red potato whose only red quality is its skin, and an eastern potato, a potato I've never heard of before. These guys are all getting the same treatment. I'm peeling them, cutting them into uniform fries, and parboiling them in salted and vinegar spiked water to help them keep their shape for 15 to 20 minutes or until they're very nearly falling apart. I'm then allowing them to cool completely on a wire rack set in a rim baking sheet before engaging in a two-step deep frying process in duck fat, a frankly unfortunate amount of which needs to be used in order to deep fry. First, we're heating it to 275 degrees Fahrenheit for a low and slow initial fry. If you want to see more about the three-step gourmet French fry making process, click the link in the upper right-hand corner right now. But we're basically confitting the potatoes at this temperature until they've turned just golden blonde, no browning whatsoever. These guys are then drained on paper towels and allowed to cool to room temperature once more. We're then raising the temperature of the duck fat just shy of its smoke point, 360 some odd degrees Fahrenheit, frying the potatoes one last time until golden brown about 5 minutes and draining once again on paper towels. After rinsing and repeating with all the varietals of potatoes, we can determine which one makes for the best fries. The eastern, red, and golden potatoes were a bust, turning floppy after only a few minutes out of the oil. The russets were decent, but the real winners were the Yukon Golds, retaining a shatteringly crisp exterior and devastatingly creamy interior many minutes after cooking. So those are going to be our fries of choice for our baseline first crack at this dish. Next up, it looked like the steak was definitely a filet mignon, which when they're this thick, your best bet for cooking at home is going to be sous vide. I'm pre-mixing together kosher salt and freshly ground black pepper so that I do not cross-contaminate my salt pinch bowl, generously seasoning them on all sides and preparing their bath bag, which I'm front-loading with a couple cloves of crushed garlic, fresh rosemary and thyme, our steaks, and several pats of butter, all of which I'm placing to the sides of the steaks so that when we vac seal things down, the herbs and garlic don't leave a permanent impression on the surface of the steaks. Next up, we're dropping our pretty little parcel into a preheated 130 degree Fahrenheit water bath, where it's going to hang out for 2 hours. Any longer than that, you better call Kenny Loggins because you're going to have spent too much time in the danger zone. Then we're removing the steaks and thoroughly patting them dry on some paper towels before heading over to the stovetop where we've got a preheated cast iron pan, generously lubricated with high smoke point oil like vegetable or canola at the ready. Because the steaks are already cooked through to our desired doneness, we want to sear them as quickly as possible, but because they're so thick, we can also engage in the selfless act of butter basting, adding 4 tablespoons of fresh butter plus the garlic and herbs from the sous vide bag, reducing the heat to medium and spooning it over the steaks until the butter is lightly browned and the steaks are burnished and glistening. Pour the brown butter over the steaks to keep them warm and because it's awesome, and then I'm going to simply saute the asparagus spears for 3 to 5 minutes in the remaining fat in the pan. Once those guys are tender crisp, it's time to plate up. It looked like a pretty simple presentation of steak, asparagus spears, and symmetrical fries. So there you have it, steak with duck fat fries. Now this is normally the part where I say it's good, but can we do better? And it's definitely good, but I feel like I kind of half-assed this, so the question is, can I do better? Let's start with the steak. It's very, very difficult to dry age meat at home, but an interesting substitute is the use of koji rice, a malted sweet rice used for making miso. I'm processing a handful of it and passing it through a fine mesh sieve to make some koji rice dust, which I'm going to use to thoroughly coat all sides of my steak. The enzymes in this rice powder are basically going to fast ferment our steaks, creating what some say is an equivalent to a 45-day dry age in flavor and tenderness after only 48 hours uncovered in the fridge. First, we're going to rinse off all the koji and pat the steaks dry. As you can see, they've even darkened in color just like they would have if they were dry aged. And from here, they can be vac sealed and sous vide'd for 2 hours before searing, same as last time. Next up, the potatoes, and this time I wanted to try a method that much more efficiently utilizes duck fat, the so-called potato pave. So I've got 2.5 pounds of Yukon Golds that I'm peeling and slicing thinly on a mandolin. Then I'm melting about a cup of duck fat, adding a pinch of kosher salt, a half teaspoon each garlic powder and onion powder, tiny whisking to combine, and pouring over the potatoes in a large bowl. Then I'm gently tossing everything together to make sure that each slice of potato is generously coated in duck fat. Then I'm rubbing down a small loaf pan with the excess fat on my gloves and lining the loaf pan with a sheet of parchment paper, pressing down into the sides and corners to make sure that it's flush, and then beginning to shingle the potatoes layer by layer into the loaf pan until it just can't support any more potatoes. Pressing them down to make sure that they're as tightly packed as possible, greasing down the parchment paper overhang and folding that over top. Then this guy's headed into a preheated 225-degree Fahrenheit oven for 3 hours, effectively confitting the potatoes and creating a loaf of delicate layers. As soon as it comes out of the oven, to ensure loaf cohesion, we gotta weigh it down. Place it on a rim baking sheet to catch any errant overflow, place the same size loaf pan over top, and fill that guy with the heaviest stuff you can get your hands on. Rice, fermentation weights, both. Then we're letting this guy cool at room temperature for at least an hour before fridging overnight. The next day, we can retrieve our potato fat log thing and begin slicing it up in preparation for frying. Use the parchment to pull out the potato parcel, and once you've trimmed off any rough edges, we can start cutting this thing into quote-unquote fries. Make sure this thing is extremely cold when you slice it, otherwise it might fall apart. Take a moment to admire the lovingly layered cross-section, trim off the rough edges, and break down into rectangular prisms, which we're going to arrange on a parchment paper-lined baking sheet and place in the freezer for at least 2 hours up to a few days. We want them totally solidified so they don't fall apart in the oil. Next up, there appeared to be a viscous sauce on the plate, so I'm going to assume it's a bordelaise, a classic French mother sauce achieved by combining 6 ounces of dry red wine, 1 small finely diced shallot, 2 sprigs of fresh thyme, and 1 bay leaf in a medium saucepan, bringing to a simmer and cooking down to a syrupy consistency, about 6 to 8 minutes, at which point we're going to add a cup of demi-glace, cooking for about another 5 minutes until syrupy enough to coat the back of a spoon. Now, bordelaise is a pretty harsh, acrid sauce, so after straining and setting aside, I'm probably going to end up mounting it with butter when we serve. Speaking of butter, that's going to be my one upgrade for the asparagus, combining 1 softened stick of the stuff with 2 finely minced anchovies. Set that aside because it's time to bring everything together. Over on the stovetop, I've got some vegetable oil heated to 375 degrees Fahrenheit, into which I'm going to gently lower my confit frozen duck fat potato logs. Now, these are pretty delicate and they love sticking to the bottom of the pan and to each other, but the rewards are great. Just look at this thing when it comes out of the fryer. So I'm going to continue cooking these guys, draining them on paper towels and keeping them warm while searing steaks and sauteing asparagus. A couple tablespoons of high smoke point oil in the cast iron and olive oil in the saute pan, adding the asparagus over medium-high heat, tossing things around, and adding 2 tablespoons of water, covering and allowing to steam for about 2 minutes in the pan, in this method inspired by America's Test Kitchen. Meanwhile, the steaks are getting simply seared and sprinkled with salt. One great side effect of the koji is that it causes the steaks to brown more quickly, which is great when you're dealing with sous vide steaks and you're trying to put as much color on them as quickly as possible. Once our fries are done, I'm gently heating up our bordelaise in a small pan, reducing the heat under the asparagus, uncovering and allowing the rest of the water to evaporate so that it can saute. Once cooked through and lightly browned, I'm killing the heat and adding the anchovy butter, tossing around quickly to emulsify into a glossy sauce. Likewise, into the warm bordelaise, I am rigorously tiny whisking 2 to 4 tablespoons of butter, lightening its color and making it richer and much more deliciouser. I'm hitting the potato paves with big flakes of finishing salt and plating things up just like before, albeit with a rich red wine sauce. And there you have it, steak, asparagus, and duck fat fries worthy of the Continental Hotel. But do the potatoes taste as amazing as they look? And the answer is a big-time hardcore yes. They're ultra crispy and taste distinctly of duck fat despite using a fraction of the amount. It's fussy and labor-intensive, but no more so than our gourmet french fry method. Next up, the steak is fantastic. It doesn't taste exactly like dry-aged, but it's got the same funky, nutty, sweet complexity, and for a fraction of the time and cost. The basic iteration is certainly good, but this one's really and truly Clean Plate Club worthy. And for a last meal, you could certainly do worse. Maybe just as a general rule of thumb, don't put out a $7 million contract on John Wick's head before eating. Thanks again to Lionsgate for sponsoring this episode. I love the John Wick movies for their world building and the way each film introduces something new to the John Wick universe. The practical effects and stunt coordination is unbelievable. Not to mention, there's usually a dish or two that I can take a stab at recreating. Go see John Wick Chapter 4 in theaters now. For more info, head to the link in the video description.